Thank you, everybody, for being here. Happy launch day. This is a long time coming. Love Dance and Egg Rolls here, finally out. My name is Luis Ramos, and I am the project manager for this book. We've worked on this book here for a very long time, and we're just excited to see it go out the door and see how it does, and just to see Jason's journey after, in the future. This event is hosted by Hooligan Press, and I would like to say a little bit about the press. Hooligan Press is a student-run trade press rooted in the Pacific Northwest, dedicated to cultivating the next generation of publishing professionals. We prioritize literary equity and inclusion. Hooligan strives to publish culturally relevant titles from our local marginalized voices in order to make literature accessible and redefine who has a place within its pages. Now, I want to introduce our two panelists. But first, we have Tracy Badwa, author of a middle grade novel called Freddy versus the Family Curse, which just debuted last week. So everybody, please congratulate Tracy. And I'm going to read a little bit about her book. Let's see. Freddy Ruiz is cursed. While other people may have bad days, Freddy and his family have had bad generations. From bird poop splatting on him on picture day to the many tumbles and trips that earned him the nickname Faceplant Freddy. He's learned to lay low and keep to himself out of trouble, which means no fun, no friends, and definitely no risks. But when he discovers a family heirloom, a century-old amulet from the Philippines that's supposed to bring good fortune, Freddy thinks his luck is finally about to change. He couldn't be more wrong because the spirit of Freddy's cranky great-granduncle Ramon is trapped in the heirloom, and the evil spirits responsible for his death have returned with a vengeance. Now Freddy and his cousin Sharky have 13 days to break the curse, where Freddy will join Ramon for an untimely afterlife in the amulet. Tracy Badwa is a Filipino-American author of books full of humor, magic, and young people with sunny hearts in a sometimes stormy world. By day, she is an attorney who works in national policy and programs, and by night, she squeezes in writing, family time, and bites of her secret candy stash. She lives in San Diego, California with her family and photogenic Maltese. And then I would like to introduce our second panelist, Jason Tanamore, of course, man of the hour, author of Love, Dance, and Egg Rolls. So Love, Dance, and Egg Rolls. I'm going to talk a little bit about the book. Jamie Santiago loves dancing tynically, a Filipino tradition that he doesn't always share with his white friends and classmates. It's hard enough balancing the demands of high school life, but with rising protests in Portland and a racist bully making his life miserable, Jamie can't help but hide his Filipino side altogether. When Jamie finds out that the last ever Asian folk festival falls on the same day as homecoming, he must decide whether his girlfriend and his best friends are more important than his love of dancing. Filipino tradition can take a back seat, or can it? Jason Tanamore is the critically acclaimed author of Vampires of Portlandia, Anonymous, and Drama Dolls. His writings have appeared in more than 250 publications, including several Filipino journals and magazines. Tanamore's parents immigrated to the US from the Philippines, and he often writes about his experiences as a Filipino American. Growing up, he did not see many Filipinos in books and wants young readers to be able to see themselves when they read. So he has made it his personal mission to write characters that aren't faceless or white. Okay, before I hand it over to our panelists, just want to say that we will be doing a Q&A after around 6:45. And I will also post links to both these books in the chat in case you want to buy them. All right, without further ado, take it away, Tracy.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat about this book. Hi, Jason.
Hi, thank you for doing this.
Right. Well, let's just dive right in. I think they kind of covered it a little bit in the synopsis, but what inspired you to write this book?
Well, so I always wanted to write this book, and I actually danced in the Filipino Association in my hometown, which is in on the border of Iowa and Illinois, and the four cities that make up that area is called the Quad Cities. So back in the day, my parents and their Filipino friends, so this is back in the 80s, so you didn't see a lot of interracial relationships. So it was primarily just Filipinos. And so they created this Filipino association and then gradually started working with all the other local associations, and they put on this folk festival. And the folk festival was an actual thing that we danced at yearly. And throughout the course of the year, we would get together at our Filipino friends' house and practice dancing, which kind of started this entire thing. And I really just think as our family just wanted to get together and do Filipino things while we were thrown into this mess. So that's kind of how it started. But I didn't really have the courage to write it because back, as a kid, it was the colonial mentality to assimilate and distance yourself from Filipino heritage. So it wasn't until recently when I finally started to get over that like I don't know how anyone else feels, but we really need to start seeing a lot of Filipino characters and stories being told.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I really loved about your book is the fact that the characters are so kind of just rich and multidimensional. There's like so many aspects to them. Um, and which kind of like leads me to my next question about, what other parts of you or your upbringing do you see in Jamie and the Santiago household? It sounds like the party scenes, like the family party scenes and the get-togethers are probably inspired by real life.
Yeah, and so Jamie's family is very similar to my real family. One of the differences is that I have two brothers, but I didn't write them into the story. I think just being lazy, you got to find them something to do. But my grandmother, my dad's mom, actually did move in with us when I was about 9 years old to kind of just be that third parental figure. And didn't speak. She still doesn't speak maybe 3 or 4 words of English. And my parents are bilingual, but I didn't speak Tagalog. So one of the biggest difference between me and Jamie is Jamie in the book, Jamie does. And coincidentally, the first draft, Jamie did not speak Tagalog. And I had this fascination that since it was written from Jamie's point of view, that all the Tagalog would just not be explained or translated. So when someone was reading it, they'd be like, I don't know what they're talking about, because that's how I actually grew up. But as the book came around, then he started speaking in the language, and I think it made the story a lot better.
That's interesting. I'm curious, do you understand any Tagalog or like enough to get by?
Yeah, I think my name didn't translate. None of my brother's names translated. So when they rattle off Tagalog and you hear your name, you start listening because it's either I'm in trouble or I did something great. And usually it was always I'm in trouble. So I can pick it up, but it's like I took Spanish in high school, but if I turned on, a Spanish channel and they're speaking really quickly, I'm just as lost as anyone else.
I mean, that was really like a cool aspect of kind of seeing the Santiago household is the fact that his grandmother, was purely Tagalog speaking. So it's like I feel like that's fairly common in Filipino and like non-English minority households is you have like the elder that like just doesn't speak English and it's not a big deal. You just like you figure it out. Like, oh, you want this for dinner or you want me to go pick up something for you, like you will figure it out. But it's interesting because you do see, there's plenty of folks who haven't had that experience. I was like, no, this is pretty
Well,
common. You kind of just have to piece it together.
my dad once told me, and I don't know if this is true, but he said in the Philippines there are very rarely any nursing homes. It's just an insult to send your parent into a nursing home, which is complete opposite as me. I will send them on the first class ticket out if any chance I get. And I'm trying to encourage them to move back to the Philippines because like in the book, one of the reasons my grandmother is in the Philippines now is because if she did pass away in the States, it would be
Yeah.
costly to send her back.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's, I don't know, that I hope that didn't bring you into a spoiler in the book, but it does, you know, it does happen. I'm sorry I led you down
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry. I didn't even think about that. This is why I should never talk.
I know. I mean, so like you know, obviously I loved the kind of just how you explore the grandmother in this book, but like let's also talk about some of the other kind of favorite characters. So, you know, obviously the dad, Claudio, has like kind of an interesting history about him. So was there a specific inspiration for the dad character?
So Claudio is kind of a homogenized version of myself now and my actual father now, but I don't necessarily think it's my father. I think he's the classic Filipino father, and without using the word stereotype, I think that this is probably common in most Filipino households. I mean, you walk in, they're always yelling, there's always karaoke going on, there's always food going on. Inevitably, they'll ask you if you had anything to eat, and then they'll point to the kitchen with their lips. There's a row of cenellas, there's a capiz chandelier hanging. So I think this is just kind of a common thing for Filipino parents, is that it's not just my father. I think this is every Filipino father I've ever met.
That's funny because I think really reading your first chapter was like it literally felt like walking into like an auntie and uncle's house where you can kind of imagine like everyone is too loud, like, and then somebody's also cooking over here and they're probably going to force you to eat, and like it doesn't matter that you literally just came from lunch. Like
You could be holding food and they'll feed you
you could
food.
be bringing food,
Right.
and they'll be like, do you want to eat this plus the other food that we prepared?
Right.
So, I mean, I thought like it was so kind of effective the way that you described these settings. They were so immersive, like especially when they do their dance practices, and like you can kind of like there's so much kind of sound and movement and food and karaoke. And I feel like you know, did the karaoke microphone, is that something you grew up with?
Oh yeah. My dad actually smuggled, and he uses the word smuggled, this probably about this size type karaoke microphone with the pad, and you know his glasses were always at the tip of his nose, and he was trying to pick which song. And no matter what, you could be just casually sitting there, you could be doing homework, you could bring friends over, there could be a funeral going on right there, and he's singing karaoke, waiting for someone else to join him. And I think that's just a common thing. And part of, you know, I think an underlying issue of me not accepting my culture was because my parents were embarrassing. But I didn't realize that until I started meeting other Filipino people and parents, and I'm like, this is actually kind of normal. But I grew up in a very similar setting. I went to a private school. Two of my best friends were white, and I just accepted that part of my life.
That's so interesting. So, I mean, because you grew up in the Midwest, and so like obviously there's parts of the book where like you said, like he has you know, non-Filipino friends, and there's kind of parts of you that you just kind of like gloss over that because I don't want to have to explain this to people. And then, you know, I'm here in California. I was born and raised in California, where like the diversity is obviously a little bit different, but it's just so interesting to see it in the book, to kind of see the different ways in which like how different it is just to be like a Filipino American. Obviously, even growing up in like very different parts of like the US, there's such a range of experience. And I think your book does that like a great service to being like, this is what it's like for some folks. So, you know, just kind of, you know, throwing it out there. We don't all grow up in like this, you know, ultra diverse San Francisco Bay Area or you know, like New York and that kind of thing. So I appreciated that outlook on it. And then, you know, kind of digging a little bit deeper into that, it sounds like it would be fair to say that this book has a lot of the cultural and character elements of you know, your own experience and your own upbringing as a Filipino American. And I'm just, you know, for your readers who are first Filipino American and those who aren't, what would you kind of want them to take away from this book?
So I think that the biggest takeaway is basically what you just kind of said, is that, you know, if everybody can agree or accept that we all look at the world through our own lens, I think a lot of these issues, especially in the book, will go away. I mean, like entitlement, like ignorance. You know, I talk about like Claudio and Jamie kind of being homogenized versions of me at different times in my life. A lot of Jamie was me as a kid, and a lot of Claudio is me as an adult. But that's still a little bit of Jamie in me because of all these factors that contribute to what makes us as people. And there's a line in the book that Jamie says that he kind of has this epiphany of his life where, and I still feel today, and I'm 47 years old, that when I'm with my parents and their friends, I feel very white. But when I'm with my American friends, mostly white, I feel very Filipino. And I think largely part is because I look like this, but I don't sound like what I should look like. And it's so weird because that really just killed me as a kid growing up, having all these weird emotions, because I'll be watching TV and there'll be like an older Asian person on and they don't have an accent, and it'll floor me. And I'll just make a comment and my wife will be like, so he's just exactly like you. And I'll be like, no, this person's older though. And she's like, you're almost 50. And so that still just crushes me. But I think if people can really understand that everyone looks at this world, and I'll give you an example. So years ago, I worked at this job, and I'm not going to say where, but the team was made up of, let's just say we had 30 people on our team, 28 were white, me, Asian, and then there was an African-American person. And we always did these stupid team building exercises. And our branch chief, who was white, tasked one of the teammates to put together a team building exercise. Well, of course, you have 28, 1 in 28 chance we're going to pick a white person. So he did. And within an hour or so, we get this email saying, okay, we're going to play a game. Bring a picture of you as a baby, and we're going to guess. So you can see where this is going, right? So me, instantly, I'm like, I'm not playing this game. An Asian adult, Asian kid, Asian baby. This is not fun for me. So I went to my black friend and said, hey, are you going to play this? And she said, she just kind of rolled her eyes and like, I'm just going to, just be a team player.
Aww.
So over the course of a couple days, they put all these baby pictures, 28 white babies, no Asian, I didn't play, and then our African-American baby. And over the course of these 2 days, they numbered them, and you're supposed to go up and go, oh, guess who, this is. And then it wasn't enough just to say, oh, so-and-so got the most. It's a team building exercise. We got to make a show of it, right?
No.
So the branch chief comes out, and I don't even think it dawned on him until he's surveying this wall of pictures. And then he comes to the African-American baby and the look on his face, right? Because in his head, he's saying, okay, white baby, Elmer's glue, eggshell, mother of pearl, clear, apparition, and then, oh my God. So he's going through these things, and you can tell it's on his mind, because as people are guessing, you can see this interaction. And he finally gets to this picture, right? And this guy should have won an Oscar. He played this off. I've never seen anyone play this off. He was like, all right, everyone, who's this? Any guesses? And I'm just like, what are you talking about? So the whole purpose of this was to build this team and unify us. But what happened was it made a situation awkward for this guy. It made me bitter. Who knows how our African-American friend felt. But in that mix of white employees, maybe a handful of them thought, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. And those are the people I think we need to reach. But someone had the thought process to go, wait a minute, I need to think about how other people are looking at this and say, I don't think this is a good idea. We wouldn't have these issues, because those are the people we need to reach. Those are the people that I think we can impact. The entitled, the ignorant, they're not inherently bad, because you're always going to have that group of people, those segment of people who, the politicians, legislators, policymakers, activists, whatever, who are continually going to go, hey, brown person, hey, person of color, hey, same-sex person, hey, trans person, hey, woman.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get too comfortable. So that's the message I wanted.
Go on.
No, I was just say that's the message I think, let's just think about other people's feelings for a minute. And I think a lot of the stuff goes away.
No, I mean, I think that's like, that's such a, first of all, I was like cringing internally so hard throughout the entire anecdote. I was like, oh, I know where this is going. And
We
it's
all
terrible.
do, but how many people don't because they don't think about it?
Yeah. No, and I think, you know, there's one thing that I kind of is one thing that's interesting to me is that this is a young adult novel. So like this is geared, you know, obviously, you know, it's technically it's ages, you know, 13 and up, anyone can read it. But if our target audience here, if we're trying to reach young people, like this is why, because like you can learn about this kind of stuff. You can hopefully start to internalize these messages without ending up being like the person that's like, hey guys, I've got this great idea for this team building event. Like hopefully by the time you get to that point in your life, you would have had experience either personally or like, again, like, you know, books and media just reminding you that other people exist.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's a scary world out there.
I mean, obviously, you know, you have it with the way your story is centered. It's very obviously like he's in high school and there's homecoming. I'm just curious though, was there any thought in your mind of maybe like making him a different age range, like in college or like as a younger kid, or was it always like he's going to be in
No,
high school?
yeah, it was always kind of that. You know, I felt like it was more impactful because at that age, I wish someone had something like that for me. And the whole sitcom thing was a coping mechanism that I still use. There's times where if I'm in an awkward situation, I feel like, you know, a laugh track should go on or something should develop because I know at the end of a sitcom in 22 minutes, everything's going to be all right. Right.
So, I mean, that's actually kind of what I wanted to chat about next is like, I really loved those moments where you have a little bit of an aside to frame it what's going on as a sitcom, because I think it gives us like a little bit of a breather, but also some distance, like in a good way of like, oh, he's going through something. I kind of need a minute to process this. So like we have these nice little like throughout the book, these little bits of his life as a sitcom. And what drew you, it sounds like there's some personal experience here, but what drew you to writing a character that deals with situations through sitcoms like this?
Well, I mean, that was me. That, you know, I've loved watching sitcoms. It was a great escape for me, and humor to me, I've always used as a means to kind of keep people at bay or situations right. And believe it or not, I did stand up for a period of time
Oh,
before
nice.
I decided I want to be a writer. You know, I growing up as a Filipino kid, I have a degree in accounting. Yay. Because my mother does. And so I practiced at a public accounting for a year or so. I decided to one day just quit and pursue stand-up comedy. And the hardest phone call was calling my mom and saying, hey, I'm going to quit to do this. And I've never heard the disappointment have sound so much. And it took a long time to, you know, and it's funny because I don't know if you have the same situation, but I'll mess up something now, years later, and she'll be like, you know why you messed this up is because 25 years ago you quit your accounting firm.
They're never going to let it go.
No.
Like Filipino moms have the longest memories like in history. One of my favorite stories is that my mom was complaining that my like when she and my dad were dating, he didn't invite her to some party that was for one of my cousins. And that cousin's like, you know, he's 45 now. So I was like, wow, you are still bitter over this party that you didn't get invited to. That's a lot.
They're the worst.
So, I'm sorry that you have to deal with the recurring mom guilt, I guess, on that.
No, I'm just kidding. I love my mom, by the way.
Yeah. So you know, I obviously saw the hints to like Big Bang Theory. What other sitcoms? I'm just, you know, out of sheer curiosity, like what are your go-tos?
My favorite sitcom is Seinfeld. I religiously watch How I Met Your Mother, The Office, Jane the Virgin, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Parks and Rec. Those are the ones I will just watch. It'll just be on if I'm doing things, and next thing you know, like 7 episodes will pass by. But you know, what's funny was I had this dream of actually writing this book like a sitcom, not just having sitcom anecdotes, but like a sitcom where the one chapter would just not make sense because you know that's how sitcoms are. You know, like when did you do that? You know, like it's just a setup to get to the next punchline, but it doesn't make any sense down the road. And so I don't know. Didn't happen.
I'm sure that would have been like exciting for
Yeah,
you know,
right.
folks who were like reading or editing your book. They would have been like, Jason,
Oh, they
what is
did.
this chapter?
No, I love all of them. So
I I definitely do love like the little snippets of it. I'm so curious to see though, like if you ever decide to do little spin-offs or something off the characters, like little side stories or bonuses, a full sitcom script for one of the chapters would be interesting. Um, so kind of shifting gears to talk about the writing itself. So what is your writing process like? Like how did you, you know, come up with the idea for this and then sit down to do it? What do you do first?
well, I'm more of a concept person, and I think like this would be a great idea. And to be honest, I hate the writing process. I hate sitting doing this. I love doing this, but for me to do this, I have to do this, right? So I conceptualize these things, and I really like the concept of this story. The laborious part of writing it was it's very challenging to me. So generally, I try to formulate the story in my head and just keep replaying it until it's time to write it, and then I'll just outline it out. But since I work a full-time job, I conditioned myself over the years to wake up at 3:30, between 3:30 and 4 in the morning, and then I write straight to about 5:30. I actually work out for that hour, and then I work, and then I have all these other obligations I have to do. But for me, that's what works because I feel like that's my most creative time slot. If I could just not have a job and just write from between 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. every day, or do something creative, that would be ideal for me. So for me, I have to condition myself because the thought of just saying, okay, now sit behind your computer and do 3,000 words is just, I don't want to do that. I sit behind a computer all day at work. The last thing I want to do is sit behind a computer again just to write nonsense. And for what? For, for a small percentage of sales, right? Like, I mean, come on, this is the worst business model ever, right? So, but we do it because we love it. And that's what keeps me going. I've never been a gamer. I don't, I'm not a sports guy. I watch, if I'm lucky, I'll watch one sporting event, and it's because my neighbor invites me to the Super Bowl. But otherwise, I don't know anything about that stuff. I just want to create stupid anecdotes that make me giggle. And if anyone else likes it, hey, great.
Nice. I mean, it definitely is one of those things where like you have to figure out how it works for you. So the 3:30, like even though you saw my face being like, no, not 3:30, like it's quiet. I'm sure you're not getting work emails at 3:30 in the morning. Like that is probably the one time that you can just concentrate.
Right. And my wife is a late, person. So it's just me and whatever cat decides to entertain me. Because the dogs will just stay with her, and then it just gives me that time to knock stuff out. And sometimes you can do 10 words, sometimes you can do 10,000 words. It just depends on what's going on that day.
Nice. I mean, that's definitely like the fact that you also give yourself the flexibility of it. Like when there is nothing worse than being like, oh, I didn't meet my completely arbitrary 3,000 word goal today,
right.
And kind of beating yourself up about it. So it's, it's a good perspective being like, I'm doing this for fun, basically, because it's not like this is getting us healthcare. So
well, and that's the thing. I've been conditioned, probably the same as you, to do something practical. So I never once in my life thought I could do this for a living. I'm going to quit my job and do this. I don't want to go back to that life. I've been a college student before. I don't want to do that again. So for me to like actually leave my job, there's got to be something more financially stable than this. But I just do it. I would do it anyway, even if it just sat on my laptop. I would just do it. Because I like doing
somewhere like your mom is like nodding her head being like, good practical
she's
practical
judging
sticking to the full-time job, getting except that accounting thing, just kind of go back to that. Now it isn't I feel like a lot of folks just have this idealized version of what being a writer is, that like you wake up late in the day and then go to your typewriter that's overlooking a lake and you just shoot out a few words and go for a walk. It's like, no, you literally have to plan time around your full-time job, probably feed yourself and some other people at some point, make sure you have like a roof over your head. So like there's a lot of other stuff. Like writing it's fun, but it's also very much, there's a kind of business aspect to it that you have to sit down and do it.
Yeah,
So.
I think a lot of authors who are traditionally that don't understand the business aspect. I think they just, like you said, "Oh, I put a book out there, I'm gonna be this thing." I mean, how many books get published a year or a day, right? I mean, so whatever you can do to keep that in the forefront of people's minds, that's what you do. So
I mean, and there is something to be said of like, I think it's safe to say that neither of us are going to be on like the top 20 under 20 list, kind of like,
well, I'm
not
27
young
years past
child
that,
prodigies
that list
like
doesn't
we're
exist.
publishing. So
Right.
like it's there's something to be said about like having a little bit of life experience and work experience and being like, look, like I know what this is. I enjoy it and it's fun, but I'm not going to, be like, I got, I have a book out. I'm going to, quit
Yeah.
quit my job and move
Right.
and overlook a lake with my typewriter. Like there's a
Right.
practical side to writing that's a lot less fun to
Yeah.
tell people about. Sorry to any folks whose dreams we just crushed right now. You still have to work. I'm so sorry.
Get a Filipino mom.
I know. I'm so sorry.
He will make sure you succeed.
Yeah, I've been so brainwashed. I'm like, stay in
I know.
school. You can write on the side after you get your degree.
Right.
So like with this book specifically, it sounds like you do some sort of outline. Like you kind of mull it, you had the idea, you kind of mulled it over for a while, and then you actually came up with like, how, I'm out of sheer just craft talk, how extensive are your outlines? Is it just like eventually he's going to do this, and then maybe in this chapter he'll do this?
They're pretty extensive. I mean, it's usually I try to outline it up to around the third act, because the final will change, but I usually leave out the descriptions, but it's almost just like a screenplay outline, without the interior, Jamie's bedroom type thing, just be like Jamie sitting in his bedroom, and all that other stuff I leave out until I can come back. And if there's a word I'm just searching for, I'll just put, X's or whatever and highlight it. Because for me, it's all about keep maintaining a flow or some sort of rhythm, because that little bit of time I have to make the most of it. I don't have that luxury of going, okay, just sit around and maybe I'll write later. I know those people. I don't want to be those people. And so for me to kind of keep things moving and progressing at the rate that I have to keep moving.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, especially if you are up that early. You're like, you don't want to waste your time, pulling up thesaurus.com and like finding the perfect word.
Right. You lose a lot of rhythm that way too.
Do you write screenplays? Like, I mean, now like the way you're talking about it, plus with all these like cool little sitcom bits throughout the book, and I keep pointing down because I actually have the book in front of me. But like, is this also something that you do? Is this something that you've been actively writing?
I had a dream a long time ago that I wanted to write screenplays, but and maybe I'm better at it, but it was always that sexiness of writing a novel, even if it sucked. And so the last book I had out, Vampires of Portland, was just recently optioned. So we're developing a series now, and I'm writing the pilot now. So we've already got directors talked to, and I really have a good feeling that hopefully by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, something good happens.
Oh my gosh, that is so. First of all, this is like,
yeah.
I've been really out of the reading sphere lately, but that is so exciting. Congratulations.
It is exciting. And I had a meeting with the producers a couple weeks ago, and they're, how's the book coming in? I'm like, it's coming out, and one of the producers, who's not really a reader, he's like, is it going to be on audio? Because he wants to hear it. And because they had talked about trying to acquire both at the same time. Ooh. So we'll see how this one goes. I'm very excited. So after Love, Dance, and Egg Rolls starts to move to the next phase, those series is what I'm focusing on.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, because I feel like it's not only great to have books about like, just being Filipino American, like the whole, I feel like in your book, like he just goes through stuff. It's not necessarily like about like how hard it is to be a Filipino American. Like he has, you know, problems with his friends. He's got like a girlfriend. Like he's just like living his life as, and happens to be Filipino American. And I'm excited to see like, you know, media out there that kind of focuses on that, of just like, it's one aspect of who you are, but he's also a teenager and he's
Right.
also like trying to get this girl to date him. And there's so many,
Right.
like,
He's a teenager who happens to be Filipino, and I don't think we see a
right.
lot
So
of
like
that.
I'm excited, you know, that
Yeah.
the prospect of even having that kind of thing in media, like it's nice because there's definitely some, you know, there's a couple Netflix shows that come to mind that are just like kind of like that, where it's like there's a minority character, but it's part of who they are for sure, but it's not about like, woe is me, my life is so hard as a minority. It's like, no, they're just doing other cool stuff. So I'm really glad that, oh, I'm so excited. Okay, I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. Well, so that, you know, obviously that is like super exciting news. Is there any more that you kind of want to explain, like what's next for you in terms of, you know, other books, or like what else are you working on?
Well, I have a first draft done of a new book about a Filipino food cart owner who happened to be a superhero back in the day, but then he kind of
Nice.
has a bad experience, so he just kind of stops doing that until a situation with a Filipino teenager trying to, you know, reconnect with something brings it back to the forefront. So it's kind of a silly humor type thing, but it's also like a superhero type thing. And so the first draft is done with that. So I kind of pick at it after, you know, enough time goes, and I kind of, but my focus right now is just, I just want to get this pilot written.
I mean, it's a good focus. There's no shortage of work to be done, like
Yeah.
on each of the books. That's exciting about is this going to be, so is this like kind of for an adult audience, the book, or young adult,
I
or
mean,
like
it's
what age range are
technically
you going
young
for?
adult because the main character is a teenager, you know. But I mean, I really hate, like, you know, that kind of classification of things, because Love, Dance, and Red Girls, I think, like you said, it could be read at any stage. I mean, you know, for me,
Age and up, like
exactly right. And I want to get them at that age, you know, where I wish someone would have got me at. And
I mean, that's like a whole other hour-long
yeah.
discussion about like the
Right.
whole age ranges in publishing, where it's like for some reason everyone disappears at college. Like we're just never going to write about college. No one ever
Right.
writes about college. You just live your life boringly and, you know, get your degree. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's super exciting. eh, I don't, you know, no pressure, but like any timeline for that? Is that
For the
like
series?
yeah.
No.
Or your food cart book.
Oh, that one?
Like
No. I mean, you know, I just kind of do things the way I want to do them, and I, you
nice.
know, I've never believed in that idea that you have to have a book out every year where people will forget about you. And I'm like, I don't really care if anyone forgets about me. I mean, you know,
I mean, your book will still be on the shelf, so it's not like
someone's gonna buy
whatever. If you
it.
forget, it's on you.
Right. I get weird emails anyway. People just find me anyway and just ask, like, hey, you know, are you interested in doing something? So I think you just do enough, put enough equity in there, and people will find you. It's not worth
Yeah,
forcing. So
that makes sense. So, you know, my last very big hard-hitting question is, what is your favorite celebratory Filipino food? And importantly, do you know how to cook it?
yes, champorado is my favorite, mainly because I didn't
Oh,
get a lot of it growing up. It was almost like it was a special occasion, when really it's just, you know, some sort of oatmeal type rice base with, my grandmother would use Nestle Quick, and that was the chocolate, and then put
yeah.
bacon bits on it, because it was that sweet and, you know, that sweet and sour type, or the, you know, the combination. But I do know how to make it. I bought this Filipino cookbook of basically you making everything in a crock pot, like an Instapot type thing, or not crock, an Instapot. I don't know. Do you know what I'm
Seen this
talking
on my
about?
friends' coffee tables. I do not have an
Yeah.
instant pot, but I feel like enough people are like, Tracy,
Oh
you should
yeah,
get an instant
yeah.
pot.
And I made it in there, and it's wonderful. That's the only thing I've had it for like 2 years, and that's the only thing I made.
Hey, you know, it's
Right.
clearly gotten its like
Yeah, you
it's
can't
gotten
have enough
its work on it.
champurrado. What's going
That
on? So,
that sounds delicious, and I feel like it's funny because we're like, see, we were like Filipinos were doing like the sweet and salty, like sweet and savory thing, you know, years ago.
Yeah.
Like the fact that other like culinary folks are now catching up. We're like, no, we've
yeah.
been doing that for years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that kind of covers everything that I wanted to chat about. I'm so excited about the work we'll be seeing from you. And I know we wanted to save some time for any questions that were in the chat.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful, guys. I have a question for both of you. So why dancing and why specifically breakdancing for your, because both of these books have breakdancing. That's incredible. So I don't know, why breakdancing?
So full disclosure, I don't break dance.
You know, it's
Also-
not. It's not a coincidence. Every Filipino person knows a Filipino person who is amazing at breakdancing, and breakdancing is actually really big in the Philippines. There's always
Wow.
one person that can windmill next to you. It's annoying as crap, but he will windmill next to you, or she.
Weddings are tough because you're like I'm not like I'm nothing here. I'm nothing on this
I
dance
just want to do
floor.
the chicken dance, and this guy over here is doing
You're
a big
right.
pop and lock windmill. What's this guy going on? So this is a funny story. When I got married, my mom, we got the DJ, all that stuff, and my mom, I'm not even making this up, asked my wife, "Do you want us to bring the karaoke machine?" I'm not even making this up. You can't make this up. And luckily,
did you? Did they bring the karaoke?
because my wife is white, she's not Filipino, so that whole side of it was going to be like, "What are you talking about? What is this?"
You're like, you can go to the other ballroom, the one that's down the hall.
Right.
You can use that. Oh my gosh. So I mean, you totally hit on it though, is that like I feel like every Filipino like is either a breakdancer or breakdancing adjacent. So I actually had one of my younger cousins read Freddie versus a Family Curse for me because she teaches like hip hop dance and she was really active in college. And I was like, hey, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Can you read this for me? And she very kindly corrected. She's like, they don't call them outfits. They call them this. They don't call them, you know, like they don't say dance number. They say this. I was like, oh, thank God I got somebody to read this because it would have been very clear, very, very clear.
Okay, I have a question from the chat. Jason and Tracy, do you have any book recommendations?
I mean, obviously his. I guess, you know, it depends what you're looking for. If you're kind of in the mood for more like, you know, for Freddie versus the Family Curse, it's a middle grade contemporary. So I say 8 to 12, but as we were just saying, it's 8 and up. Anyone, anywhere can read it. But if you're looking for something funny, Stand Up Yumi Chung is about a Korean American kid who gets like through mistaken identity gets pulled into like a stand-up comedy class that she kind of uses to save her parents' Korean barbecue. So that's a really fun story. And if you kind of, there's plenty of Filipino middle grade authors who do like contemporary stuff. Like May Respicio does a lot of I think she has How to Win a Slime War was her most recent. And there's also in the Philippines, we've got Gail Villanueva, who does, you know, Sugar and Spite and a lot of really, you know, cool, magic-y Filipino stuff. So I can always, you know, send those links around later, but those are some fun, like for the 8 to 12 or 8 and up set.
Yeah, it just depends on what you're looking for. I mean, one of the last books I read that I really liked was called Hench, and I can't remember who was the author, but it's essentially about superheroes and villains. And this gal, the main character, is looking for a job, and she gets a job as like a support person for a villain. And it's just a different look on how superhero and villains work. And it's actually it was really funny. It went by really quick, but it really just depends on what you're looking for.
Cool. I have a question for you, Jason, from the chat. What was your experience working with Hooligan Press?
It was great. it was really cool. And no, all jokes aside, I really value the feedback and the professionalism that everyone had. And I love that there's just a wealth of hands on this book. Other publishers have only a couple hands, so I felt like it really got the attention it deserved. And I highly, highly recommend, and I wish all of you here the best in your future adventures.
And I guess this question is from the chat, and it's I would say for both of you. What is your favorite character to write and why? Or what was your favorite character to write and why?
So in my book, there's a character that is it's not a spoiler because it's literally in the copy, but there's a great granduncle ghost who's like a teenager that is from World War II, and he was a lot of fun to write because I pretty much pictured what my grandmother would have been like as a teenager and how she probably would have been just as I was going to say rude, but Grandma, you're not rude. You're very straightforward. In case you watch this later, you're very straightforward and refreshingly so. But like trying to pull those moments in there of like, what would somebody act like if they had, if they had no filter, if they didn't grow, like, have those decades in between of when they learn, social situations. How awkward would they be being a teen forever? So that was mine.
I think Claudio, the father, was really my favorite, mainly because I felt like there was a little bit of connection to my own dad. As silly and goofy as he is sometimes, there is that little bit of seriousness, that he does want as well. And one of the things that he always told us as kids is that the only thing he wanted for us, why they came here, was he just wanted his kids to make more money than he did. And and that meant it was a very simple statement, but it meant a lot to me because that it really encouraged me to try harder at what I wanted to do in life. But it just gave me that little bit of connection to him writing it, because he's back home in Iowa, and I don't get a chance to see him. Like, he's not a phone guy. He'll butt dial me, and he'll be like, and I'll call him back, and I'll be like, hey, did you call? He's like, no. But there's no conversation. And, oh, okay. And then he just hangs out. It's just weird. So he's just not that type of guy. So that was the best.
I got a really important question here. Go-to karaoke songs.
Okay, so this requires other Backstreet Boys, but I Want It That Way is, I don't know why it's my go-to, but I think if I recruit other Backstreet Boys, it really helps. And the joke is, tell me why, because I want it that way.
I don't have any go-to karaoke songs because even though we had the karaoke microphone going up, I have an older brother who is like, first of all, a far better singer, but also, stronger than me. So he would have his turn all the time. And I was like, it's fine. It's good. I never got to hone my karaoke skills, which is interesting because I feel like a lot of like Filipino professional networking events are very karaoke centered. And I'm like, oh no, I never developed the skill. Just like I never learned how to golf. Like I'm just going to, fail on all these potential networking things. So I don't have any go-to ones, but it is fun. Like when people like don't take it as seriously. Like occasionally you'll have the person that's a superstar, but when you have like the group ones where there's a few folks who are jumping in and are probably terrible, or like, you have the one person that's just like really, really into the Spice Girls song. Like those are kind of the fun ones.
I have a question for Jason specifically, but this could be for you as well, Tracy. We never really asked you if you had ever like visited the Philippines or if you took inspiration from just the actual being in that place. Like I don't know if like did you ever feel like what was that experience like if you ever did visit the Philippines? Or do you plan on visiting at any time?
I have not visited. I was actually born in Iowa City at University of Iowa Hospitals. And during that time in the 70s, President Marcos was in power. And so my family actually fled the Philippines because of martial law was imposed. And a very long story short that I want to write about at some point, but my dad was part of the people power movement back then that kind of helped overthrow him, and to a point where my dad was actually on a blacklist, on Marcos's blacklist. And they basically had to leave the Philippines to come here to the States. And so for almost 20 something years while he was in power, I think it was what, 88 or something, or maybe when he fled to Hawaii and Corazon Aquino became president, they never went back. And it was really weird. So I never really had any interest in going back because he didn't. I was just kind of, you're terrified as a kid knowing that, especially what's going on now, very similar what's happening now. But I do want to go back. We plan on taking my parents for their 50th anniversary. That was one of the things we talked about, just paying for them to fly home, hopefully in 2023. It happened during COVID, but obviously that didn't occur. But if you ever look at tickets, a round trip to the Philippines is almost 10 grand or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Especially, I think now they might still have like the quarantine requirements. So it's like you're paying for the ticket and a 2-week mandatory hotel stay. So it's a lot. I haven't, I've been in the Philippines a handful of times, maybe like 2 or 3 times, but I think 3 times. Because we do still have my parents still have some close family in the Philippines, but I realize it's very different to visit as opposed to live there. Like you definitely don't get, they roll out the red carpet for you because you're like, you're the family that's visiting, and they, everything is, they take you to all the nice spots, and they, make sure transportation is taken care of. Like you don't have to ride a jeepney or go on, you will always have the air conditioned van kind of thing. So it's very much a different experience than I think if we were to live there, or if I were to, for example, like go on my own without my parents. Like it's I have been there a few times, and to be honest, I think one of the things that at least kind of made its way into my writing from it is the idea that like it's very clear that I don't know everything about the Philippines. Like visiting, and you realize like there's so much going on, politically and socially here. So like there are some topics that, I don't feel comfortable really, spending an entire book on, because like, what do I know? Like, I don't live in that same sphere. It would be unfair for me to try to be like, this is how it is. So I think travel in any respect is really helpful to kind of remind us, that there are a whole multitude of ways to, to be Filipino, to be Filipino American, to just, there are so many things that we can, so many different kind of experiences that we can focus on. And then some things that you're like, it's fine. Like there are plenty of other storytellers out there for that too.
Awesome. I have one final question from the chat, and then we can wrap up. Okay, obviously, I know all the writing spots here in Portland. Like, I write as well, and I like to go to coffee shops and stuff. But you're in San Diego, right, Tracy? Can you tell me your favorite writing spot in San Diego? Or do you even write outside, or do you just write at home?
I mean, now I do. Now I write at home. So I have a toddler, so it's literally just like wherever I can just, I'll sit in a closet and write if I need to. But before pre-COVID, I actually where I work for my day job is actually up in Orange County, which is about 2 hours from where I live. And I used to be able to take the train up, but the train has Wi-Fi and it has wine. So that used to be like my favorite place to write, is like, at the end of the day, I have 2 hours just to sit on the train to come home. You can order like your little snack box, and you could just, get things done, which was great while it lasted. But I'm, glad that the days of the long commute are, all the time are over.
Yeah, the train here in Portland is nothing Nothing like that. Wine is usually stuck to the floor.
And we have the nice Amtrak that literally goes like right by the ocean. So you're like, oh, I'm stuck on something. Let me look out the window, and there's like the sun is sparkling over the water. So that's like my you know the idealistic writer like moment right there. It was just like literally on the commute on the train.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. And congratulations to both of you for, we had Freddy versus the Family Curse come out last week. And today, of course, Love, Dance, and Egg Rolls. Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for being here. Congrats, everyone.